Today we'll be discussing the tragic passing of the 9 people on board the helicopter crash in Calabasas, including NBA All-Star Kobe Bryant.
Followed by some major controversy surrounding the Grammy Awards voting process.
And finally, we're bringing you the latest CSUF and local news. All this and more on today's episode of The Report.
Hello and welcome back to The Report, Cal State Fullerton's premier source for news, views, and info. I'm Bree Eastlick.
And I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Ryan Matthew. And before we get started with our first hot topic, we'd like to invite you to be a part of the discussion this semester. Click on the link in the description of any of our Report episodes to fill out a secure Google form with your opinion on any controversial issue that we've talked about now or in the past, as many of these issues are reoccurring and evolving. We also have a Twitter account at The Report CSUF. Make sure to follow to check out our polls, questions, and news updates.
Basketball legend Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash along with 7 other passengers and the pilot. Bryant was traveling with his daughter, aspiring WNBA player Gianna, to Thousand Oaks when the helicopter went down in a hill ridge in Calabasas. According to the CNN report, other passengers in the helicopter included head baseball coach at Orange Coast College, John Altobelli, his wife Carrie, and daughter Alyssa. Others on board included assistant girls basketball coach Christina Mauser, teammates Peyton Chester, her mother Sarah, and the pilot Era Zabayan. The pilot had been given special clearance to fly under abnormally overcast conditions. Celebrities, fellow athletes, and fans from all over took to social media to honor the NBA All-Star. Former President Barack Obama notably said, quote, "Kobe was a legend on the court and was just getting started in what would have been a just as meaningful second act. To lose Gianna is even more heartbreaking to us as parents. Michelle and I send love and prayers to Vanessa and the entire Bryant family on this unthinkable day," end quote. We at The Report wish to extend our thoughts and sympathies with the families of the victims during this difficult time. You know, this is really, really hard to talk about, and it makes me want to cry just thinking about it. I saw something on Twitter this morning that said, Kobe Bryant made the earth stop spinning. And I think that's absolutely true, because not only did this affect the basketball community, but it affected other athletes around the world, whether they were soccer players, baseball players, softball, every sport, and even people that weren't athletes, because everyone was so inspired by him, from his Mamba mentality and his compassion towards people in the sport. So this is really, really hard. And also, he was working on a children's book recently as well that I found out. And he was working on it with Paulo Calejo. I really hope that's right. And once he found out about the tragic incident, Paulo decided to just completely delete it all, because he said that it wouldn't be right and it wouldn't make sense to publish it without Bryant.
Well, you know, I think I was reading a story earlier this morning, actually, about how in a very contentious world where we're very divided, right, politically and whatnot, with sports figures, there's something that communities can, you know, kind of rally around. And this, you know, this passing of a famous figure that's given so much joy to the Los Angeles area. I'm from Chicago, and Michael Jordan certainly did that. For us, you just identify with something that feels like, wow, there's somebody who works hard and he's representing me and my city, and it just gives us a point of reference where we can all say, wow, we can come together with this kind of an idea, loving a same sports franchise or whatever. That's the power of a sports franchise lots of times, you know?
What I will say I hated when this story came out was kind of how quickly this was reported on, where obviously TMZ was the first to report it, which they do kind of frequently, but it's just, I don't think they confirmed all the facts beforehand, and even though they did get it right, I'm pretty sure they reported this before the family even knew. So to think of that for Vanessa and the 3 kids that Kobe left behind, that must be heartbreaking to hear it from. I mean, I'm not sure where exactly they heard it from, but they didn't even know before it was reported on. And also if you go to to like ABC. ABC incorrectly reported that the entire family was on the crash before it was kind of confirmed that it was true. And so I think in times like this where we have such huge figures that are making Bree almost cry, making Jefferson, feel this kind of way, like you as journalists, we need to be like kind of respectful of these families, and we need to be responsible when it comes to reporting kind of huge tragedies like this.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, moving on into other stories in the news, this one is dealing with President Donald Trump and the impeachment inquiry, which has now turned into a trial in the Senate. President Donald Trump's legal team continues to defend him during day 2 of Monday's Senate impeachment hearings. Trump's lawyers argue his decision to freeze military assistance to Ukraine is legally justified, and that the case against Trump, demonstrated by Democrats to the Senate last week, does not imply an impeachable offense. One of Trump's private lawyers, Ken Starr, urged senators to steer away from the whole, quote, age of impeachment, unquote, citing his concern of how the impeachment has become more of a political weapon than an act of justice. However, a bigger concern does remain afloat. The New York Times reported an unpublished full manuscript by former National Security Advisor John Bolton regarding his knowledge of Trump's halt upon military aid to Ukraine until the Bidens are investigated. With this brought into the light, this political scandal is far from over. There's a lot of things we can talk about here, so let me just jump in really quickly for our audience and say, just so we're all up to speed, the whole reason the impeachment happened, and you guys correct me if it's not right, is that there was this quid pro quo. Remember Trump saying a million times, there's no quid pro quo. Meaning, I did not say, do this for me and I'll give you the money. And all of a sudden, oh, okay, I did say that, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? Anyway, so let me just say what that is. So a couple years ago, it turns out that the newly elected president of Ukraine was in conversation with Trump, and he says, look, we've got $400 million that the government here passed the House and the Senate is available to you, but I just want to ask a favor. It's showing that I'm going to hold up what Congress, what the other 2 branches of government have already allocated to you, because I want you to do me a political favor for one of my political opponents.
I'll say, so Ken Starr, who's the private lawyer for Trump, right, and he's defending him in this whole thing, he said that this is such an awful thing. This impeachment is going to be used as a weapon, right, from the Democrats, and it's so awful unless there's some sort of bipartisan consensus. And it's just so ironic because he was very important in getting Bill Clinton impeached way back in the 90s, where I was 2 when it happened. So obviously I'm not sure of everything that was happening at the moment.
You're a genius. I remember it.
I remember it. It was so great. I love the 90s. But it's just, it doesn't make sense because the whole point of impeachment is to take out a sitting president who is just not working it out. The people don't think that the president is representing you the best. And Bill Clinton, in that scenario, he won the electoral college vote and the popular vote twice. Okay, and he was still impeached because for obvious reasons. But in this sense, Trump is not liked, I don't think, on a national level.
Well, also it's what's sad though is that we would need, because they need 2/3 of the votes, to actually go through with it and have him impeached. They would need 20 Republicans though, around 20 Republicans to actually get it to happen. So do you guys think that we could actually get 20 Republicans?
The big question, and a lot of Republicans say this, who are not in office anymore, so they're safe, they can speak their minds. They're saying, I don't recognize my party. Will my compatriots have enough gumption and love their country enough to do what's right for the country?
Yeah, so as much as we don't want to talk about it, we will be talking about this later, so
yes,
stay tuned
will.
for that. Another virus that we're going to be talking about is the coronavirus, where the Wuhan, China virus that continues to spread through Asia equally has started to spread through Southern California. Health officials have now confirmed 2 cases of the virus in both Los Angeles and Orange counties, bringing the number of confirmed U.S. cases to 5. Both infected patients have recently traveled to or from Wuhan, which has been determined to be the center of the outbreak in China. Both patients are currently being cared for in isolation and are reported to be in good condition. According to the CDC, 73 other U.S. patients are currently under investigation for potentially having the virus, and they have defined the symptoms to include high fevers, coughing, wheezing, and pneumonia. While there is currently no vaccine to prevent the infection, they say the best way to reduce the risk of getting sick is to either remain home when ill, wash your hands with soap and water frequently, and avoid close contact to people who are already sick.
The highest court in the land gave the go-ahead for one of President Trump's hardline immigration policies on Monday. The U.S. Supreme Court has voted a 5-4 rule that will ultimately make it more difficult for immigrants to obtain a legal citizenship status. Specifically, the rule can potentially reshape legal immigration by restricting access to green cards for lower-income immigrants. This administration's rule will mostly impact those who receive public assistance, such as food stamps or housing vouchers. In response, a New York judge issued an injunction on the rule just a week ago, although he faced some backlash. A Solicitor General, Noel Francisco, appealed to lift that injunction. If put into motion, this legislation will allow the rule to go into effect, but the appeal process continues. Now, I understand that there's a lot that goes into making these policies, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of bantering back and forth, but correct me if I'm wrong, I feel as if what this is saying is if you're not rich, if you don't have some kind of following, if you're not famous, then the government doesn't want you here. But also I want to talk about, earlier today before we started, Jefferson, you were talking about public charge. Can you talk a little bit about that, like explain
You
that?
bet. Here's what public charge means. Since 1996, sort of like the bar of measuring who gets a green card is, let me put it this way. Would your primary income be cash from the government? That's what a public charge is. Now, what the Trump administration says is it's not just cash, it's any assistance. It's any assistance. So now things are definitely in turmoil. And if you've done everything that you think up until this moment to try to obey the rules, play by the rules, do everything right, I'm going to finally get my green card, and then they're going to do this. Yikes.
Look, as if it wasn't already hard enough to be an immigrant in America, like this is just adding to this list of kind of the discrimination that we're going through, where basically this policy is making it harder for legal immigrants to get a green card if they think that they are going to be dependent on government funds, right? And so, especially on Twitter, because that's obviously where I get a lot of my information from, people are talking about how they're juxtaposing this to like the Nazi era and how back in the 1930s when we were having European Jewish people trying to flee to America, public charge. They said, if you are going to be depending on us for all these charges, like we're not going to accept you, public charge. So this is really history repeating itself back over again, and we're still hating immigrants, I guess.
Yikes. The Supreme Court said you can go ahead and put in this new ruling, but it's still working its way through the courts. This isn't the final word. This is not the final word.
We'll see.
So here's a little news that's close to home, and it's kind of heartbreaking. Over winter break, Cal State Fullerton felt sorrowful as they sadly lost a fellow Titan. On January 6th, student Jonathan Castillo Basquez, a first-year psychology major and avid rugby player, was discovered to be deceased by his roommates. He was a member of the Guardian Scholars program that supports current and former foster youth. This program helped organize a vigil for Basquez near campus on January 10th. Further, a private wake was held for the Titan on January 16th, where friends and family came together to celebrate his impactful life. Friends and fellow Titans of the housing community spoke highly of him, describing him as being a compassionate, caring, and positive person. Basquez will be dearly missed.
Well, switching into some lighter news now, talking about the Grammys, as music lovers rejoiced for the music awards this past Sunday. However, their excitement was not without some controversial dissonance. 2019 Recording Academy CEO Deborah Dugan was put on administrative leave just 10 days before the show, following accusations or allegations of conducting voting irregularities. In her complaint filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in December of 2019, she criticizes the review process of being subjected to lobbying and favoritism from committee members. Dugan says one nominee for the Song of the Year category was moved from the 18th ranking to the final 8 that voting members ultimately voted on. She declined to identify the artist, but said that this nominee not only sat on the nomination committee, but also was represented by a member of the Academy's board. The Academy said in a statement on January 16th that Dugan was placed on leave for misconduct towards, quote, a senior female member of the Recording Academy team, end quote, who was later identified as Claudine Little, Director of Administration. In response, Dugan told the LA Times that, quote, the Recording Academy must change. To bring the Grammys down because of a few bad eggs wouldn't be fair to the artists, end quote. And I believe that. So I read this and I think, like, Hollywood, like, surprise, like, it's fake, like, nothing's real. Like,
I know, that's what I hate about this.
it's you love it, and obviously, like, I'm assuming, like, you guys, I grew up watching Grammys, watching Oscars, watching these huge shows, thinking, like, this is, like, the top, this is the best. And then you learn later in life that's the industry has their own ways of doing things. And unfortunately, it's come out like this, and it is very, like, sad for us to now kind of view the Grammys in this way. And so I think a question I would probably ask you guys is, what do you think is going to happen now to the reliability of the Grammys? Do you think people are still going to be considering, like, a Grammy Award in the same way that they were before?
Well, you even said, like, when we were talking before the show, you even said that the viewership is declining.
Yes.
And that's true across the board for just network television anyway. I think that there's those challenges to deal with. But I shared with you, I'm a Grammy voter. And something that you read that I did not know. I thought when I got my ballot originally, I would just write it all down and then the top voter would win.
Let me tell you how it works instead, Jefferson. So basically,
this sucks.
It sucks. 13,000 voting members, right? They're all going to cast their ballot for the thousands of different potential nominations, right? And then from that list, it's kind of dwindled down to about 20, which then the Recording Academy and the nomination committee are going to dwindle down to either 5 or 8, depending on whatever category that they're talking about. The one that Dugan's talking about specifically was a category of 8 people, and the person who was ranked 18th out of the 13,000 voters was moved from 18th all the way up to the top 8. So it's a little shady in that sense, because there seems to be some sort of inside workings, and it doesn't seem authentic anymore. It doesn't seem genuine, and it doesn't really, like, seem like an honor at this point. It seems just more like, if you have the money, if you have the support, if you have the recording deal, this is kind of just going to fall into your lap. So what's going to happen now for maybe these up and coming artists, for indie artists, for minority artists, right? They're not going to have as easy a chance to get this sort of award or recognition, or recognition. Sorry, it's a Tuesday again.
I can interpret, Ryan. I get it.
Thank you.
But one thing I will say though, yay, Billie Eilish. I love when
Yes,
up and
5.
coming artists win. I just think that's wonderful. That gives me hope. That gives me hope. You were saying something before the show too, that you were a little suspicious about the person who was ousted.
Well, I mean, if you are going to be in the room, that's absolutely wrong. But the problem is that this woman Deborah comes out, and she's like, oh, all of this is happening. But after she gets called out for harassment and, like, bullying, basically. So it's like, you're just deciding to come out now, but then she says that she's been trying to talk about it all along on the inside so it doesn't come out. But I just think that there needs to be more people who are trying to, like, look into it. Something needs to change. But at the same time, co-workers of hers said that that's not like her. She's not a bully. She is great to work with. So it really makes me question both ways. So I feel like we just need to actually have somebody kind of go more on the inside. But it's like, if there was other people in the past who worked with the Grammys, then why isn't anybody coming out and saying this is true or it's not?
This is messy.
It really is.
Totally
Sorry.
Big old
Totally
Grammy
is.
mess.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to get away from all the mess, the news can be bad, right? Well, here's something that you might like. It's time to start packing your bags. The end of January celebrates National Plan Your Vacation Day, a holiday dedicated to helping people commit to taking time off and travel. The national holiday is meant to promote the benefits of vacations, which include overall improvements in relationships, health, and happiness at work. According to the U.S. Travel Association, 55% of Americans left a total of 768 million vacation days unused in 2018. Waiting until the last minute makes it harder to budget for a trip. Vacation planners are 19% more likely than non-planners to use their time off to travel. A couple of tips to help plan your next trip include determining your exact travel days and even coordinating plans with loved ones. So, the next time you think you have to skip out on that tropical vacation, you might want to think again. It may require some planning, but the benefits may be rewarding.
And with that, guys, that is all the time that we have today on The Report. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info to go. I'm Ryan Matthey.
And I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Bree Eastlick. Stay fresh, Fullerton, and welcome back, Titans.
And take a vacation.